Freddie Mercury's final recording, the song he couldn't finish singing, in a small recording studio in Malibu, California. Something extraordinary happened on November 15, 1991. Something that would remain hidden for decades. The ocean waves crashed against the cliffs outside Sunset Boulevard. Inside Studio 7, the silence was deafening. Freddie Mercury sat alone at the piano. His fingers trembled as they touched the keys. The same fingers that had played Bohemian Rhapsody to millions. Tonight, they could barely hold their position. This wasn't supposed to be his final recording session, but fate had other plans. What happened in those 4 hours would change everything we thought we knew about the legend's last days. The song he tried to record that night, it was never meant for Queen. It was never meant for the world. It was meant for someone else entirely. Someone he'd been searching for his whole life. Someone who had been waiting in the shadows of his fame for over 30 years. The studio's red recording light flickered on. But this time, nobody was watching. Nobody was listening, except the ghosts of Freddie's past. 3 days earlier, Freddie had called producer David Richards at his Beverly Hills home. It was 3:17 a.m. Pacific time. "Darling, I need a favor." Freddie's voice was barely a whisper through the phone. Something private, something personal. Richards had worked with Queen for over 15 years. He'd produced The Game, Hot Space, and The Miracle. He'd seen Freddie at his highest peaks and lowest valleys. But he'd never heard Freddie sound so vulnerable, so desperate. "What do you need, Freddie?" "A studio. Small. Intimate. Just me and a piano. No cameras. No witnesses. No bloody managers." The desperation in Freddie's voice cut through Richards like a knife. This wasn't about money. This wasn't about contracts or deadlines. This was about something deeper. Richards arranged everything within hours. Studio 7 in Malibu was perfect. Tucked away from the Sunset Strip chaos. Hidden from the paparazzi who had been stalking Freddie's every move since the AIDS rumors began circulating. The studio was small but acoustically perfect. A Steinway grand piano sat in the center, vintage Neumann microphones, analog mixing board, everything Freddie loved about the old days. The session was booked under a false name, Frederick Bulsara, his birth name, the name he'd abandoned when he became Freddie Mercury 23 years earlier. The name that belonged to a scared boy from Zanzibar who dreamed of becoming someone else. But on this November night, he wasn't the flamboyant rock god who commanded Wembley Stadium. He wasn't the theatrical genius who created We Will Rock You. He was just Frederick, a dying man with a secret burning inside him. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content that's coming up. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Studio 7 was dimly lit when Freddie arrived that November evening. The California sunset painted everything in shades of gold and crimson, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. He looked frail, thinner than anyone had seen him. The mustache that had become his trademark was now patchy. His eyes, once bright and mischievous, were sunken, but still burned with an intensity that could stop time. In his hands, he carried 2 items that would unlock the mystery of this secret session. A worn leather journal, its pages yellowed with age, and a small wooden box, no bigger than a jewelry case. "This is it," he whispered to the empty room, his voice echoing off the acoustic panels. "This is what I've been trying to say for 40 bloody years. The journal contains something that would shock the world if they ever discovered it. Love letters, dozens of them. written in Freddie's distinctive handwriting over the span of 2 decades. But these weren't love letters to Mary Austin, not to Jim Hutton, not to any of his known lovers or confidants. These letters were addressed to someone the world had never heard of, Michael Bulsara, his younger brother, who had died of leukemia at age 7 in 1954. The brother whose existence had been erased from every biography, every interview, every official Queen document. Freddie had been carrying this grief for over 4 decades. The weight of survivor's guilt, the pain of achieving everything his little brother would never experience. Tonight he was finally ready to let it out. The wooden box contained something even more precious, a small silver ring, child-sized, engraved with the words, M.B. Forever Brothers. Freddie placed the ring on the piano, next to a photograph that had never been published. 2 boys, 1 9, 1 7, arms around each other, smiling at the camera with identical gap-toothed grins. The song he was about to record wasn't for fame or fortune. It wasn't for Queen's legacy. It was a goodbye, a final conversation with the brother he'd lost, the brother he'd never stopped loving. At 8:47 p.m., Freddie sat at the Steinway grand piano in the center of the studio, the same position he'd taken thousands of times before. But tonight felt different. His fingers found the keys naturally, muscle memory taking over. A simple melody began to emerge. Haunting. Beautiful. Nothing like the complex harmonies Queen was famous for. This was pure emotion distilled into music. David Richards watched from the control room, his finger hovering over the record button. He'd never seen Freddie look so vulnerable, so human. The tape machines rolled. "Michael," Freddie began to sing, his voice immediately cracking with emotion. "Can you hear me now, after all these years of silence?" The lyrics poured out of him like water from a broken dam. 20 years of suppressed grief channeled into verse and melody. "I became Mercury for you, my darling brother. I reached for the stars because you couldn't. I sang to stadiums because you never got the chance to sing at all." For the next hour, Freddie poured his soul into the microphone. He sang about the guilt that had consumed him since childhood, about becoming famous while his little brother rotted in a Zanzibar cemetery, about the emptiness that no amount of applause could fill. "Every song was for you, Michael. Every note, every breath. I was trying to live your life and mine simultaneously." The lyrics were raw, unfiltered, confessional in a way that made Richards feel like he was intruding on something sacred. This wasn't the theatrical Freddie Mercury the world knew. This was Frederick Bulsara, the boy who had watched his baby brother die and never forgave himself for surviving. "I should have protected you," he sang, tears streaming down his face. "I should have been the one to go first." But something was wrong. With each verse, his voice grew weaker. The medication cocktail that kept his symptoms at bay was wearing off. His body was betraying him at the worst possible moment. By 10:30 p.m., he could barely hit the high notes that had once come as naturally as breathing. The voice that had conquered Somebody to Love and We Are the Champions was failing him when he needed it most. "Please," he whispered to the empty studio, looking up at the ceiling as if Michael might be watching from above. "Just let me finish this one song, this one bloody song." But his body had other plans. At 11:15 p.m., everything fell apart. Freddie was in the middle of the bridge, the most emotional part of the song, when his voice cracked completely. Not from emotion this time, from the illness that was slowly destroying him from the inside. He tried again and again, each attempt weaker than the last. The man who had never missed a note in 20 years of performing couldn't sustain a simple melody. "Damn it!" he screamed, slamming his fists on the piano keys. The discordant crash echoed through the studio like a gunshot, reverberating off the walls. and settling into silence. For 20 minutes, he sat motionless, head in his hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The man who had commanded stadium crowds of 80,000 people couldn't finish a song for his dead brother. The irony was crushing. "I'm sorry, Michael," he whispered into his hands. "I'm so bloody sorry. I can't even do this right." In the control room, David Richards faced the most difficult decision of his career. He could intervene, try to help, or he could let Freddie work through this alone. That's when something extraordinary happened, something that would change both their lives forever. Richards made a choice that went against every professional instinct he had. He turned off the talkback microphone, walked out of the control room, and entered the studio. Freddie looked up, startled. His eyes were red and swollen. The makeup that usually hid his illness had long since washed away with tears. "David, I can't." "I know," Richards said quietly, sitting down next to Freddie on the piano bench. "But maybe that's okay." "No, it's not okay!" Freddie exploded. "This is all I have left. This is the only thing I can still give him." Richards had worked with hundreds of artists over his career. He'd seen breakdowns before. But this was different. This was a man confronting his own mortality and finding it lacking. "Tell me about Michael," Richards said gently. And Freddie did. For the next hour, he talked. Not sang, just talked. About his little brother's infectious laugh, his dreams of becoming a pilot like their father, the way he'd hum along to Freddie's early attempts at songwriting, even though he was too young to understand the words. "He was the musical one, you know?" Freddie said, his voice growing stronger as the memories flowed. "I learned piano because he begged me to. He said music made the pain go away when the treatments got bad." Richards recorded every word, sensing that this conversation was more important than any song. He used to make up his own lyrics to popular songs, silly little things about our cat or the garden. But they were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Freddie reached into his jacket and pulled out a piece of paper so old it was practically transparent. Child's handwriting, crayon on foolscap. He wrote this the week before he died. "It's a song about flying, about meeting me in the clouds someday." Richards read the lyrics. They were simple but profound, the work of a 7-year-old genius who would never get the chance to grow up. "Freddie," Richards said carefully, "what if we don't try to finish your song tonight? What if we record his?" At 1:30 a.m. they began again. But this time, it was different. Instead of trying to force his failing voice to carry an impossible emotional load, Freddie simply spoke Michael's lyrics over a gentle piano accompaniment. "When I grow up, I want to fly. Above the clouds, up in the sky. I'll wave hello to all below and sing the songs that make hearts glow." His voice was shot. He could barely sustain a speaking voice, let alone sing. But somehow, that made it more powerful, more honest. Then Freddie had an idea that would create the most beautiful and heartbreaking recording of his career. "David," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "I want you to layer something underneath Michael's voice." "What do you mean?" Freddie reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the wooden box. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a cassette tape so old the label had completely faded. "I recorded him singing when he was 6, just fooling around in our room in Zanzibar. He was singing one of my early songs, something I wrote for him when he was in the hospital." Richards was stunned. This tape had to be from 1953 or 1954. Before Queen, before Freddie Mercury even existed. This was Frederick Bulsara and his baby brother, captured in a moment of pure innocence before tragedy struck. They loaded the ancient tape into the mixing board. The sound quality was terrible. Scratchy. Distant. Recorded on equipment that was primitive, even by 1950 standards. But there it was, emerging from decades of silence, like a ghost returning to life. A little boy's voice, sweet, innocent, Slightly off-key but filled with joy. He was singing a melody that would later become Love of My Life, but the lyrics were different, simpler. The words of a child singing to his big brother. Freddie is my hero. He plays piano every day. When I'm scared or when I'm sick, his music takes the fear away. Freddie broke down completely when he heard it. 40 years of suppressed grief poured out of him in great, heaving sobs. But then something magical happened. He began to sing along with his brother's voice. Harmony across 4 decades. Brothers reunited through the miracle of analog tape and shared DNA. We'll be together always, though I might go away. In every song you ever sing, my voice will be there to stay. It was heartbreaking, beautiful, perfect. The two voices blended in ways that defied explanation. Freddie's mature, trained vocals supporting Michael's innocent tongue-sung. Past and present, colliding in a moment of pure musical transcendence. But Freddie's body couldn't sustain it. The emotion, the physical strain, the weight of 40 years of grief finally overwhelmed him. At 2:47 a.m., he collapsed forward onto the piano keys. The recording stopped. Richards rushed into the studio, but Freddie was conscious. Just exhausted, completely drained. "It's finished," Freddie whispered. "It's finally finished." Freddie Mercury died 18 days later, on November 24th, 1991. The tapes from that Malibu session were immediately sealed by his estate. Jim Hutton never knew they existed. Neither did the remaining members of Queen. The official story was that Freddie's last recordings were the vocals for Made in Heaven. But David Richards knew the truth. For 22 years, he never spoke about that night. Not to journalists, not to biographers, not even to his own family. The weight of the secret nearly destroyed him. Richards carried the burden alone until he was diagnosed with terminal cancer in 2013. On his deathbed, he made a decision that would have shocked Freddie. He told his son about the tapes. "There's something in the vault," he whispered during his final weeks. Studio 7, Malibu. Something Freddie never wanted the world to hear. But maybe it's time. What kind of something, Dad? The truth. The real truth about who Freddie Mercury was when nobody was watching. After Richards died, his son James spent months tracking down the storage facility where his father had kept his most precious recordings. When he finally found the vault, he discovered something extraordinary. 7 hours of recordings from that November night. Most of it was Freddie talking, remembering, grieving, confronting the guilt that had shaped every day of his life since childhood. But there, at the end of the final reel, was the song. Michael's innocent voice from 1954, Freddie's broken voice from 1991. 40 years of separation bridged by love and music and analog tape. The song Freddie couldn't finish singing had become something more beautiful than anything Queen ever recorded. James Richards faced an impossible decision. Release the tapes and give the world a glimpse into Freddie's deepest pain? Or honor the secret that had consumed his father for over 2 decades? He chose silence. The tapes remain locked away in a safety deposit box in downtown Los Angeles, for now. But the story doesn't end there. Some say those tapes should remain buried forever, that Freddie's most private moments should stay private, that some secrets are too sacred to share. Others believe the world deserves to hear the real man behind the legend, the brother, the grieving child who never got over losing the most important person in his life. The debate continues in Freddie Mercury fan communities around the world. But on quiet nights in Malibu, when the marine layer rolls in from the Pacific and the world goes silent, studio engineers at nearby facilities swear they can still hear something drifting on the wind. A voice, floating through the abandoned Studio 7. 2 voices, actually. Brothers, singing together across time and death and the vast emptiness that separates the living from the lost. Finally harmonizing, finally at peace. the truth about legends isn't always what we expect. Sometimes, the greatest performances are the ones no one was meant to hear. And sometimes, the most powerful songs are the ones that bridge not just octaves, but entire lifetimes of love and loss.